Welcome to another episode of the PLM Global Green Alliance, talking with software suppliers of PLM-related sustainability solutions. My name is Voskuil, and together with my co-host Klaus Brettschneider from the PLM Global Green Alliance, we are happy today that we are talking with Rafal Witkowski and Erik Rieger from PSC, talking about their GreenPLM solution. Rafal, Erik, welcome to this episode. And first of all, I would like to ask you to introduce yourself and your personal relations towards sustainability. And I'll start with you, Erik.
Yeah, thanks, Jos. Thanks, Klaus. Very glad to be here and talk to you. So I'm looking forward. Basically, I'm Erik Rieger. I'm based in Berlin, Germany. I'm in the PLM arena since about 30 years. In the meantime, spent about 26 years with PTC and joined PSC last year. My role in PSC is on one hand being PLM evangelist, taking care of also about particular topics here in Germany. At the same time, working with Rafal on portfolio definition. And as one of our key strategic topics is GreenPLM, and we're more than glad to be here today.
Okay.
So, Rafal.
So thank you very much for the invite. Thanks for having us. My name is Rafal Witkowski, and I'm working in PSC since 2006. So it's been a while already. My background is primarily PLM and software engineering. And like Erik said, together at the moment, we are working on the product engineering portfolio, which is a set of solutions and offerings that address the most demanding customer needs. So that's our mission, and this is what we are doing together with Erik.
Okay, thank you. So you're both experienced PLM guys, and now we're going to zoom in on sustainability and maybe first the company. Can you tell us something more about your company and the background and the relation also to sustainability?
So maybe our company is a global solution integrator, addressing a couple of areas that are related with manufacturing. It's, I think, a comprehensive offering for software services and solutions. And we are, of course, very close partnership with PTC. So we work on PLM, IoT, AR, and also other areas like regular software development. And with regards to sustainability, as you know, at the moment, sustainability has become a top 3 priority for most of the manufacturing companies. So, of course, we understand that need a couple of years ago. We understood that need a couple of years ago, and we were trying to address it. So that's why one of the core offerings from our company and our department is the offering that we call GreenPLM, that is about to help companies with the sustainable product development. And on a more organizational level and on the area how our company commits to sustainability, I can tell maybe 2 interesting points.
Okay.
Of course, we have the official CSR report, which is available on our website, and probably people from HR could tell a little bit more about the details. But what I found very interesting is that we planted 700 trees to celebrate our 700th employee, I think 2 years ago. And also maybe what you can find interesting is that every company car at the moment is the electrical car. So we are now moving entirely. So maybe that's just the 2 interesting facts. How do we commit to environment and sustainability?
So you worked on your scope 1 numbers with the cars.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, okay. Okay, Erik, anything from your side about your part of the company?
What I see, my main background is, of course, working with the customers 26 years ago. And if you look forward to GreenPLM, we understand there's something in front of us and we have to face a challenge and prepare. With my or our particular background about product engineering, our question is, how can we contribute and leverage our knowledge being supporting sustainability right from the very first idea of a product, engaging this and evolving this over the time. So that's from my personal perspective, especially from my customer background.
Okay. And Klaus, any points from your side?
No, I'm really curious. Now you talked a lot about the green PLM. Let's talk about what the solution provides for designers.
Exactly, that's the next question. What is green PLM?
What is green PLM for you? What can designers do with your software?
So maybe as a bit of a background for that, because when we look at what happens at the legislation regulations level at the European Union, it was quite recently when the new version of ESPR regulation was released. And this ESPR regulation...
Rafal, maybe when you use abbreviations for the audience, can you explain what is the ESPR regulation?
Of course. It's the Eco Design for Sustainable Products regulation. And this has been updated at the end of March 2022. And the main difference in that regulation compared to the previous Eco Design Directive is that previously the regulations were focused on product use and product recycling, which means that it was the energy use really what was the primary focus of the regulations. At the moment, which was motivated, the new version of that regulation was actually motivated by the study that was done by European Union in 2015. That turns out that it's the significant impact of the environment to the environment is actually determined earlier. And now the focus was just switched from the late phases of product development to the early ones. And I recently read that European Commission is expecting 30% of CO2 reduction inside that early design phase of a product. So now most of the companies need to have a look at the design stage and see what is possible to do. And of course, so what it means that PLM parameters, the parameters of the product that are set very early in the lifecycle stage, are the parameters that determine the impact. But at the moment, we don't have too much solutions that are connected to the early design of the product. There is no dynamic way at the moment to actually, for the designer to see, okay, what's going to be the environmental result when I make my decision? Which is like, when I talked with one customer last week, he said, when we select a part from supplier, we are very clear about the part cost. But at the moment, we have no clue about the target CO2 emission. So we would like to have something the same.
Yeah, so as you say in the beginning, and I think it comes from the other calls also, 80% of the environmental impact is done during the design phase of a product. And that's why the importance of PLM, or at least product development and also analysis of product development, becomes so important.
Exactly. And you know, Jos, what's funny about this number? It's difficult to identify the source of this statement, 80%, but it's actually officially released on the European Commission page. Okay. But there was a study done by Toyota that confirms that at least 70% of the impact is determined in the design.
Okay.
So we got something confirmed by industry.
Okay, so
I think the number comes from a McKinsey study, actually. They studied the impact of design and what impact this has to resources, and they came up with the 80%. So there's a study from McKinsey out there, what can be referenced if necessary.
Okay, so we are talking facts.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's McKinsey.
Yeah, interestingly, one more story about this one. I mean, we all assume that GreenPLM is something new, so we need to basically determine the unestimated unknown sources. But if you look at our traditional thinking as engineers, basically, and making, for instance, a cost assessment at the early phase of product development, that's a similar story. So basically 80% of the costs are determined in the first 20% already. Yeah. So we can learn a lot from our traditional thinking and apply it to GreenPLM. And it comes back to your question, what about GreenPLM? So it's the extension of our cost-wise driven thinking to this new area of sustainability. And we can learn a lot from this. That's my thought.
So is it just like you have a cost parameter, now you have a sustainability parameter, or I think it's a little more complex, right?
In the past, we had 3 dimensions: cost, quality, and time, and now we have a 4th dimension. That's why I think it's a long-term journey. We're just extending our traditional thinking, but we need to keep in mind that we learned from the past how we applied it for 3 dimensions, and now we have to add a 4th dimension. And of course, it's not in our mindset right now, but I assume that for the future, designers will think in this 4 dimensions, not only 3 dimensions.
Right.
Yeah. And to add on top of that, I think that, of course, this is not that simple. It's not just one parameter, because there is a selected method, which is called EF 3.0 or 3.1, which is recommended by European Commission, that actually determines number of impact categories, and there are also documents that define which categories are relevant for which sector of the industry. So it's not going to be that simple. We need to have a look at the environmental impact comprehensively, because sometimes when you optimize on CO2, you end up with the negative result at different parameters, for example, water use or fossil depletion. So of course, we need to understand the comprehensive impact of the product, but we are I would say we are on the same mission that we had before, for example, with the manufacturing process management, when we actually the customers start to understand at the moment that this needs to be tied up with product engineering data, with the CAD, with structures, additional documentation, etc. And what we also find on top is that the environmental footprint calculation or sustainability journey is going to be a journey that it's going to be a collaborative journey between number of the departments. It's not going to be only the design department. It's going to be also procurement to be able to have the relevant information about suppliers, and also environment. So environmental departments, environmental experts. So in my opinion, at the end, we need to have a toolbox for the designer, a very simple toolbox to make decisions in particular in the 2 areas of selecting the relevant material and selecting a relevant supplier. But at the end, to build that, it needs to be a collaborative effort of design office, environmental office, and procurement offices, based on what I see from our customers.
Okay, so what I hear, Rafal, you talk a lot about methodology, and I think that is very important. And you talk about the toolbox. Is GreenPLM, is it the toolbox? Is it the capabilities to bring in this data, or is it also methodology driven?
It's actually a little bit of everything. So it's a toolbox, and I would say, it's the extension of PLM with sustainability features. That's really like the first step, and our intention was to build it in a very intuitive way for the designer. So when you look at this, on the left side, you have a 3D preview of the product, then there's a product structure, and then on the right side, it's extending, it's a toolbox, it's the sustainability toolbox where we can see all of those impact categories that are actually configurable, and you can make additional actions, including setting your desired environmental targets, which is part of bringing your eco-design principles into the product development process. Compare between number of versions, which is very important. See the difference between different versions, but also see the difference between different manufacturing views. See the difference between different variants, etc. So it's the extension of PLM, a toolbox, and we use the EF 3.0 or 3.1 methodology as a starting point to be compliant with what European Commission is recommending at the moment.
Okay, and then there is the data that you need. Where does the data come from?
And this is the very interesting question, of course. We start with the database. We have environmental databases available at the moment, which the most commonly used one by most of the LCA tools that we have is, of course, EcoInvent.
Right.
So that's the first step. So the idea of the lifecycle assessment is that we need to divide the data for the company into two areas, the primary data and the secondary data. Primary data are the data that company knows. So like a direct emissions that we can measure from use, from production, etc. And this is something very important for the customers to be able to provide those data directly into the database. And of course, for the data that we don't know, we need to use the tools that help us to estimate. And we use EcoInvent as a first step, but we already know that for some of the elements, to be more detailed on the material level, to be more detailed on, for example, electronic components level, especially for those coming from China, we need to also maybe extend it for some additional databases. There are databases that are helping us with that, but I also think that it's going to be, again, a combined effort of this known static data and unknown estimated coming from environmental data sets.
Right. So the challenge I see very often is that basically in design departments there's no knowledge about LCA at all. So is your expectation that someone will prepare the data for the designers, or is your approach more that the designer has to learn to deal more with this kind of information?
That's a very, very good question. At the moment, we would like to make it as simple as possible for the designer. So I see it in a way that we configure that or administer that by environmental, potentially with some support from our side as consultants, and then product engineer should not be able to play with the lifecycle assessment data sets that much. Which doesn't mean, but there might be some points that are very specific that, for example, an engineer knows that this particular component of the structure requires a particular heat treatment. And this is the knowledge that is inside engineering department, not in the LCA. They need to get it from engineering at the beginning. So we open we have a feature in the solution that allows you to associate. So to associate particular transformation activity or economical activity with particular part of the product. But as the basic and startup setup, we want to preload and then allow this collaboration between engineering and environmental people to build that. Preferably involving the LCA results if they exist, because for some companies they exist already, but for some companies they don't exist at all, and then we need to work on that together.
Yeah, and with that, we talk about the tool, the methodology. Then the next question is: are companies already using it, and do they see already, results in changing their product strategy? Do you have any experience with implementations at this moment? Maybe Erik, I see you nodding yes, or?
I was just smiling because you asked earlier for GreenPLM, what is GreenPLM? And based on what Rafal has just said, I mean, we should be clear that GreenPLM means not a new or turning everything upside down, but extending PLM and allowing the designers to stay focused on his original activity and not blowing up his activity.
But we know that an engineer is not going to work different if he has a different tool set. Somebody has to push. There needs to be a management drive.
Exactly. So that's why we are not making a new PLM, basically adding something or enriching PLM and not changing the environment which we have today.
And so how do you see sustainability being accepted by your existing customers or new customers?
And this is another very good question. So basically, we should be aware that we are beginning of the journey. So also customer understanding right now the impact of sustainability. And just have in mind a recent survey about 46% of the companies do not consider seriously PLM right or green sustainability activities right now. And I think we are right now at the beginning of a larger journey, making sure that sustainability is in everyone's mindset of new product strategies. So I'm not aware about to be honest, about any company defining sustainable parameters as part of the requirements at the beginning. So that's basically an outcome result of a product development. But for the future, I assume that it will basically be the starting point of every product concept and product requirement definition.
Exactly. I think to give you some feedback with the PLM Global Green Alliance, some discussions I had 2 years ago, I think we were really talking to the sky, to the good mood from everyone.
Yeah.
Now we see really in companies people assigned with those roles and also getting KPIs at least move forward. So
they are, but
are serious years for sustainability.
Yes, but even then, I mean, we see also the first organization, Board of Directors, is commissioned against sustainability KPIs. But even from there, it's still a journey, understanding what does it mean for our operational business. And that's where we see the customers right now. That's from our standpoint is we are pretty sure it will come. Mentality will change to a sustainable driven mentality, starting product concepts with the requirement of sustainability in the future. And also at the same time, right now, it's a very small investment for the companies to establish green thinking as part of the product engineering. But we should be aware that that's still a journey and mindset is still changing. That's by our perspective to invest heavily on this area and prepare the basis for having entire sustainable green thinking along the entire product lifecycle process.
It's also interesting to see how companies, so if companies do life cycle assessments, how they deal with the results. Because I have seen design departments taking the result and totally changing the product because now they have to produce something green, but they don't care about anything else. So they may design something totally new, but every improvement on the other tools and other modules are not affected because the LCA just doesn't work for this or is not considered there. So it's an interesting development at the moment where really design departments get on it, but do not standardize it and do not get on it for the entire process. Yeah.
That's right now starting. If you think further, even this one, I mean, one of our thoughts is about we have the manufacturing BOM, which defines how a product is assembled together. But in the long term, we have a disposal BOM at the same level of the M BOM, basically taken into account right from the beginning of design. That's why our approach is assuming that for the future, we have an M BOM, which is about the creation of the product. And we will continue to have this disposal BOM, recycling BOM, which is part of the product development for the future.
Okay. Rafal, you were talking a lot about also European directives. Do you have, as a company, also experience with the US, with Asia? Is there some interest in GreenPLM, or are you quite focused on European customers?
European customers are going. So the regulation is going to affect every product that are intended to be sold in European Union. So it's going to be, we're going to lead that as Europe, but I see also main interest also in Asia, which is of course due to the fact that many Asian companies are selling to Europe. So I think that's going to be the two main markets. And also at the moment, this is our primary point of focus. Yeah.
Might give up time to Jeff, but remember our discussion with Norwegian customers, with Italian customers, with German customers, and even within Europe, we have a wide variety of different assumptions and different approaches to GreenPLM. So, of course, from our European perspective, there's a difference between Asia, Europe, and America. But even in Europe, there's a wide variety of different customer perspectives right now.
And do you have a broad variety of customers, or are you focusing in a specific industry?
No, there are different, really different products, different verticals, different industries. I think that just one really commodity in that is the product-centered industries, right? Not service-centered, product-centered. And also I would like to maybe add is that I found out a little bit that PLM needs to be at a particular level of maturity. This makes it a little bit easier to extend with the sustainability because, of course, if company is starting the PLM journey, it's much more difficult. That's something common that I found for most of the discussions that we have. And yeah, like Erik said, it's going to be different between different industries, different verticals, and also different countries. But I think that like the main thing is this gap of having the environmental or sustainability domain connected to the product lifecycle domain. That's what we see, that at the moment most of the organizations are missing that. This is done manually. And I believe that's something, and of course, selecting the relevant material and selecting the relevant supplier are the most typical use cases for that.
Yeah, I think modern PLM and sustainability go very well together, because the old PLM is often just an R&D tool or an R&D environment, and it's something that you really need to do holistic, horizontal through your organization. And,
it's also a mindset question, right? Companies with a PLM system in place, they have an idea about the visual representation, how they can roll up data, how the structures work, how they can standardize their products. And if you have this kind of control, also the calculations on the sustainability side is much easier than if you have to invent another virtual model just to make it happen. Yeah.
It's interesting because we speak a lot about digital transformation, but we are also experiencing these days sustainable transformation, which is another aspect of that. I would say digital, maybe it's a different aspect, but it's another aspect of the global transformation of the industries. So, yeah.
And with that, of course, when we talk about sustainability, PLM, I think also circular economy needs to be mentioned as part of the mindset of sustainable products. You mentioned that you were working as a partner on top of the PTC solution. Could people that are not using PTC also use GreenPLM, or is it dedicated on the windshield backbone?
So the main concept of GreenPLM at the moment is dedicated for primarily for the PLM for the PTC PLM system, which is of course windshield. But the concept that we use, I think, can be reused on different platforms. But we are concentrated on windshield customers. So and this is the way we built this. Also is using this brownfield approach, which is really appreciated by our customers. So they don't really need to change the data model. So it's not an add-on to Windshield. It's built on Navigate. The main concept is based on Navigate when you can build on existing data and infrastructure. You don't need to touch it. It's just a natural role-based view into the product data that is contextualized and synthesized for the sustainability. So and this is how you can actually implement this collaborative space, because you can have a designer way of designer view or designer app, and you can have a environmental expert app, two separate views. And this is how you can work on the same data from the different perspective.
So help me out a little bit. What is Navigate? What's the difference between Windshield and Navigate?
So Navigate is the framework that allows you to build apps for Windshield. Mm-hmm. So it's like a lightweight. There are a couple of applications that are built on top of Navigate that allows you to access and manipulate Windshield data in a very user-friendly way. So you don't need to be a designer. You don't need to access Windshield. You can log into Navigate. You don't need to understand the product lifecycle management UI. You can, for example, submit your tasks or see the product data, etc. And we are reusing those components. So it means that we just do it. It's like we are reusing Navigate components. So we retrieve the data and then just link it with the sustainability database that is built as a part of GreenPLM. But if it's used, but if it's done on top of Navigate, then it will grow with it. So if the components will change, we will also the GreenPLM will also change with them.
Yeah, I think most PLM vendors have this lightweight layer to connect different sources without using the heavy GUI and the complex GUI.
Yeah, but let me add to this. I mean, to what we said earlier, what is GreenPLM? And GreenPLM doesn't mean that we invent a new PLM system. We need to take into account we have a kind of brownfield approach. So data is coming from every sources, and we cannot, because of sustainability, introduce hundreds of new systems. So we need to have an approach which basically pulls data. It's more an integration challenge. Pulls data from different sources like PLM, like supplier systems and so on. So that's why we have this integration layer. And that's one thing versus the example, or Navigate is the example for this integration layer, which we need to have to establish sustainability in a brownfield approach and is able to pull data from every source.
I think this brings us closely.
Other data like from EcoInvent. I mean, EcoInvent is also data taken into account. And that's our integration layer, pulling data from various sources, and which is a key part of any sustainability strategy from our understanding.
So this brings us almost to the end of the discussion. GreenPLM, what are the developments in the product? What can we expect? You have your connection now with the design. Are you planning to do more additional modules or capabilities, or are you still waiting first for the more interaction?
We have a defined roadmap, so I think that we are working on a couple of additional elements. Some of the interesting ones will maybe include, for example, having some usability functionalities for the designers in regards of making choices. So, for example, a designer doesn't need to select from entire list of materials that is used in the organization, but can have some recommendations or advisors or some advices. We also are looking into, on a general level, we want to understand, well, we are working also with additional partners and trying to build this like system architecture and positioning between different solutions to complete the gap. So we are good here, but we can also integrate with other partner, extend, for example, so we can have a better precision at the material level, or we can have a better automation, etc., etc. So like Erik said, it's going to be a matter of integration. I don't think, but based on what I see from the customers, there's not going to be one solution that will address sustainability need from one company. I think it's going to be a number of them, and we need to make sure that we integrate and use the correct tool for the correct use case.
Okay, good. I think we'll provide with this interview also some links. I think you will probably have a website where people can learn more about GreenPLM.
Of course.
And so that we will publish then in the links with this recording. And for that, maybe Klaus, do you have a final question from your side?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay.
Great to meet you. Good to see you.
Great to meet you, bro.
Rafal, it was a pleasure, and thanks for your insights in GreenPLM. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much for having us, and thank you very much for the insightful discussion. So have a great day.
It was a pleasure.
It was a pleasure.